So you don't hate your 9 to 5. You just hate the way it makes you feel. But before you even think about going and starting your little business, there's something that you need to understand. And I don't know if you felt this before, but there was a time where I just felt completely jerked around in my corporate career, right? The 9 to 5, how it was making me feel. I was just like, what is going on here? And it was just a time where you know how it goes at corporate. You get an assignment, they make a huge deal about it. You put in all this effort up front to, do your research and get prepared because you want to knock it out of the park, right? You do all of that. And then what kept happening to me is that for one reason or another, it would get canceled. The project would get canceled. We wouldn't have resources. We wouldn't have funds, you name it. And so they just tear it down and they'd say, "Here, Jerry, go work on something else." And it's like, that's cool and all. But what about all the time I spent getting prepared for this one? And that just, I mean, it happened like 4 or 5 times in a row. So I'm like, okay, I see what's happening here. I'm just not going to take you all that seriously. And people always say that corporate is just a bunch of experiments and nobody knows what they're doing. No lies. Nobody knows what they're doing. And I think that because corporations have gotten really big and they've made a lot of money and they've hired a lot of people, that we believe that there's some grand plan, that they're following some plan that they laid out 5 years ago and it's going according to plan and everything's smooth sailing. And it's like, no, half of the things that get planned don't take off. Half of the things that get planned don't turn out the way they expected. And I think what employees don't necessarily think about is that that is the game. They know that half the things they try won't work, but they are just in the habit of seeing if something will work at all. And so I was sharing that with one of my friends, and I was like, man, another one of my projects just got canceled. Like, this is frustrating. And she said something. She's like, it's almost like you're doing the most for nothing. She was like, "That's how everybody feels in their corporate career. You're doing the most for nothing." Because while you are hustling and trying to make things happen for your company, decisions can change at any moment, directions can change at any moment, and your hustle is just a sunk cost. Like, you can't go back and get that time. There's nothing you can do about it. It was just an experiment for you as well. And so what most people do when they are sick of, going around and around and feeling like they're actually not getting anywhere in their corporate career, the next logical option is to leave, right? Go start your little business, get you a side hustle, do something on the side. It's completely logical and I get it. But then you have to understand the realities of entrepreneurship. And I know a lot of people make it sound really sexy and really glamorous, but they're doing that to get you to buy their programs, to be honest with you. Because business, like when you're running a business for yourself, there are three things that you really have to understand and get down, right? That's marketing, sales, and operations. And nobody's teaching you that, right? If you went to school for engineering like I did, those topics never even got covered, right? But having been in corporate for over 20 years and having run all kinds of businesses, that is what it boils down to. And so marketing is, how do you get people's attention? How does anybody know that you are available to serve them? Sales is, how do you get money to exchange hands, right? Whatever it is you're offering, how do you get someone to actually put in their credit card number or give you cash for whatever it is you're doing. And then the operations is how do you actually fulfill that? So, for example, if you are a graphic designer or you're doing websites, well, when you initially started your business, you're like, you followed your passion, most likely. You're like, I'm great at doing web design or I'm great at graphics. Let me start a business doing that. But what you're not thinking about is, and this is the part that working in corporate kind of shields you from, is how is anybody going to know that you're offering that service when there are literally billions of people who are willing to do anything? So how does anybody find you specifically? That's your marketing. And then what is the mechanism? Like, what are you providing that's different from the person right next to you that will get the customer to pay you instead? And so there's a lot that has to take place before you even get to design the website. Before you even get to do the graphics, the marketing and the sales have to be working. And at the end of the day, the marketing and the sales have to be working. And at the end of the day, guess what? You're still doing the most. And the reason you feel like you're still doing the most is because you got in it to, follow your passion and do what you like to do. But once the business actually gets up and running, you very soon realize that I'm spending more time doing the marketing and sales, doing the things that I didn't necessarily set out to do, right? And you start to feel that same movement. You start to feel that same emotion that you felt while you were in corporate. And this download came to me the other day. I was driving in a car and I was listening to a podcast and she said something about posting on social media and it just clicked. And I don't know why it took her saying something to click because I've been posting on social media for years now. But when she said it, I was like, oh my goodness, corporate and entrepreneurship are the same. They're the same, but different sides of the coin. And I was like, I've been living this myself because pretty much at corporate, right? Like if you don't, my projects kept getting canceled. But if I still want to get my paycheck, I still have to dust myself off and get ready for the next project, right? Like I have to keep it moving to keep the paycheck coming in. And then I was like, well, in my real estate business, if I don't make the necessary investments, like if I don't do the maintenance for my properties, eventually my tenants move out and eventually that money dries up. And so that's when that business starts to feel like doing the most because it's like I bought some properties. They should be able to kick off the what is it called? Passive income. Nothing passive about it, by the way. But once I buy the properties, they should be kicking off passive income. And then you start to realize, no, I might have to do something every month. Every month, there's either a clogged toilet, there's some water dripping from somebody's ceiling, there's something every single month. And you're like, oh God, I'm doing the most. And then when I think about my personal brand, like the creator said that I was watching on YouTube, if you stop posting the content, the personal brand dies. So it's like you started the personal brand for whatever reason, but in order to keep the personal brand going, you got to keep posting the content on all the channels. You got to feed all of those channels that you're on consistently so that people know you exist. Because if nobody knows you exist, you don't have a business. You don't have a brand. If no one wants to live in any of my properties, I'm not a real estate investor. And so the only real difference between corporate America and entrepreneurship is how it makes you feel. because both of them will make you do the most to keep it going, to keep the revenue, to keep the income stream. They both make you do the most, and they both jerk you around. The, the difference is that in corporate America, you feel oppressed when they jerk you around, when they change their minds, when they change directions. A layoff is nothing but them changing their minds or changing direction. But when they do that, you feel oppressed. But when you do it as a business owner, you just look at it like it's just a part of the process. I think about all the jerking around I've done in my real estate business. For example, anytime a process doesn't work for me or for our income, I change it without notice, without anything. I usually I try to give people 30-day notice. I give my tenants 30-day notice and I give my employees 30-day notice. But if something's not working, I'm going to change it. So you used to be able to walk into a bank and deposit your rent into my bank account. Well, that started to be a problem for a whole host of reasons. And so I changed it. I said, I only accept online payments now. Imagine the uproar. People are used to going into the bank, putting checks in the mail, doing all kinds of things. No, no, no. Here's my online system. Put your debit card in. Done. That is how I accept rent. The end. Serious jerk for them. Operational improvement for me. And then I think about, with my personal brand, I recently hired a video editor, and he's getting in the groove. He knows my style. He knows how I want my videos to look. And maybe 4 or 5 videos in, I'm like asking for something different, right? I changed my mind. I'm like, I know you're used to editing this one way, but things have changed. I've looked at my analytics, I've looked at my business, and I need to change some things about your editing style. Again, he probably feels jerked around. Even more so when you have history and you're like, well, I've done it this amount of times. And the business owner is still like, I don't care. Corporate is doing the same thing. It's just behind many, many, many layers that you don't see. There are people in a room trying to make decisions about how to keep the revenues high and the expenses low. And they are enlisting all sorts of experiments to make that happen. And I think the key is that that's what business is. And so whether it's you working in somebody else's business or you running your own business, there's experimentation, there's jerking around, there's upset, and most importantly, there's hamster wheel. You are going to be on a hamster wheel. It's almost like we're destined to be on that hamster wheel as long as we need income. If you get to a place where you don't need income, and maybe that's where everybody's trying to get to, when you no longer need income, you're not on anybody's hamster wheel. So I was talking to one of my friends who's trying to get her business up and running off the ground. And the roadblock she keeps running into, and she actually said to me the other day, she's like, I don't have time to wait for things to settle out. I don't have a year. I don't have 18 months. And I'm like, then you don't want to be in business because it takes that long to get it figured out, even partly. And you have to be okay. I shared the similarities between corporate and entrepreneurship. You have to be okay with the idea that how you started your business, it may not end that way. You're gonna change your mind about marketing. You're gonna change your mind about sales. You're gonna change your mind about how you operate. And so, I've heard there's this thing. A lot of people right now, instead of building their own business, they are buying other people's businesses, hoping to skirt around the experimentation. And it'll work for a while, right? But every business has its problems. And so you are constantly like dodging things to keep your revenues high and your expenses low. And so for my friend who says she doesn't have time for everything to be figured out, it's almost like we're that's coming from a place of being an employee because you are under the guise that you walk in the door, you make a business plan, and you work the plan, and that things don't change in the process. And I have to say that, like, sometimes it's not always the business owner who's changing their minds and want to do things different. It's like, what's going on out, the things that are going on outside of me and outside of my business, sometimes they dictate a change that I need to make. And so when it comes to, I don't have time to work out the kinks, I need to get a business that's, ready made, ready to go with no kinks. That doesn't exist. So I'm by no means telling you not to start your own business, but I want you to walk into it fully knowing what you are up against. I do not want you running from your corporate career, ditching your 9 to 5 because of a feeling. One of my favorite quotes is, your feelings are not facts. The facts are that you need to pay your bills. Those are the facts. You need to sit in those feelings for a little bit. Chill with those feelings. Do whatever you need to do to sit a little bit longer without disrupting your income. So don't shy away from experimenting because I want you to take action. Action is the only way you get answers, right? Action is how you build confidence, and confidence is how you build cash. Let me know in the comments today if I got it right or if I'm completely off base. And if you enjoy reading as much as you like watching, you can find me on Substack at Confidence is Cash. And you can follow my AI journey on the Prompt Life podcast here on YouTube. That's all for today, guys.